Final Four is set for Homestead, and one driver will walk away with the 2017 Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series Championship. We'll get driver-by-driver analysis from PSN NASCAR analyst and NASCAR.com editor Kenny Bruce, as Prime Sports NASCAR, brought to you by Race Review Online on Prime Sports Network, starts now. All right, thanks for tuning in with us again here on Prime Sports NASCAR for this Wednesday, the 15th of November, 2017. I'm your host, Greg DePalma, and we have one more race to go for the 2017 season. If you were with us on Monday, we told you we were going to be doing a show here today, and we were going to be welcoming back Kenny Bruce to the program, and he is here. So, Kenny, good talking to you again. Thanks for checking back with us.
Yeah, it's good catching up with you, Greg. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, Kenny. So we did our playoff preview before the chase began, or the playoffs began. So what did you? What were biggest surprise, if there were any big surprises to you from when it began to where we are now?
I think up to this point, probably the biggest surprise is the fact that the 48 team, Jimmy Johnson, didn't advance. Everybody's been so used to seeing them kind of pick it up a little bit when the playoffs start, and even if they've, not run as well as some other teams, typically when they get into that 10-race playoff, they're able to show some improvement, and I don't think they did this year. And I think a lot of people really expected them to run a lot better, and it wasn't like they just. I don't think it was any one thing, and that's what's kind of confusing about them, because normally they're so solid from top to bottom. It seemed like it was a different thing every week or so that kept them out of it. That was, I guess, really that's the biggest surprise for me. Most of the other stuff was pretty expected. There were, some people that made it a little further than I thought they would, and some people that fell out a little sooner than I thought they would. But overall, it went pretty much according to what a lot of people thought.
Yeah, when we gave our picks before, of course, we had our picks in February, and then our picks before the playoffs began, and that's just me, you, and CJ. Of course, Eric Smith from Race Review Online came a little bit after, and Eric will actually be on at the bottom of the hour after we are done. And we take a look at the picks, and I know the one pick that definitely we both picked Kyle Larson as a sleeper in the beginning of the season, and so we were very high on him when the playoffs began, and we both put him in the Final Four. And look, we all did. We all had Larson and Truex and Kyle Busch in the Final Four, but Larson didn't get there. That was the big surprise, I guess, for us. Just the way that team just seemed to fall apart there. The car, what was it exactly that prevented Kyle Larson's team from making it to Homestead?
Well, they had engine issue. I want to say that cost them a bad finish, and you really can't afford to have that if you're not winning races. You win a race in one of the stages, you're going to automatically qualify for the next stage. They weren't doing that. And then once they fell out of the playoffs, they pretty much, I don't know what they're doing, but they've fallen apart. They've had like 3 DNFs in 4 races or something like that. And really, had they advanced, they wouldn't have been around much longer, just based on the way they run. But yeah, they were one of the better teams. We all thought they were going to be there at the end. They had the speed, even the people in the garage. When you talked about who's got a shot to make the Final Four, Larson was one of the ones that everybody talked about. And, they just didn't put it together when they needed to. Everything wasn't buttoned up on the team. They had some issues and a couple of bad finishes, and that was all it took.
And then you actually went with your sleeper pick, Matt Kenseth, who won last week. But
yeah, 1 week too late.
Too late. But he did have some issues, of course, earlier on in the playoffs, which prevented him from getting to Homestead. Not his own issues, but some pit crew issues that really caused him to miss out, and which was kind of unusual considering how good his pit crew is.
Yeah, it was, and I mean they had a damaged car, and the NASCAR has a damaged vehicle policy this year where you're put on a clock. You have like 5 minutes to make your repairs. You can only have a certain number of people go over the wall, and they had more than was allowed to go over, which basically, I hate that it cost them a shot at the title, but I mean, it's been a rule all year long. It's not like they just did it for that one race, and that's what took them out of it, and that finish, ended their title hopes.
Well, my preseason pick is still there at Kyle Busch, and I really do have a good feeling about him going in, just because of the fact that when I take a look at this group here of these 4 drivers that do have a chance for the championship, Kyle's as cool as they come, as somebody that I don't think is going to have to worry about pressure or anything like that. What do you think, starting with Kyle Busch out of the 4 drivers here, what do you think about his opportunity on Sunday? And would you say he's the favorite or second choice? Where would you put him?
Well, me personally, I wouldn't make him the favorite. But I do like the fact that, he's won the championship under this format before. He won in 2015. He picked up a couple of wins during the regular season that put him in the playoffs. Once you got into the playoffs, he had back-to-back wins, New Hampshire and Dover. And then they won at Martinsville, which to me was kind of unexpected, to earn a shot here at Homestead to race for the title. I think he's been good this year at times. If you look at the 1.5 mile tracks, they didn't start out that great on him, I don't think. And he hasn't won on any of them, but he's won at Homestead, and he's had some good runs there in the past. He's got a good shot, I think. Like you say, he's an incredibly talented driver. From the driver standpoint, I don't think anybody's better than him that's in the Final Four. From the team standpoint, they're good, but I'm not sure they're as good as a couple of the other teams that are out there.
He does have another reason why I feel good about his chances. As you mentioned, he kind of got off to a slow start this season, but what is it? Over his last 15 races, he has 5 wins. I think that's what that is. 5 wins, last 15 races. And we know how, and that's it. We know Colin knows how to win races, and we are looking at, is it possible that we're going to get a 4th straight winner wins the championship situation, which NASCAR has got to be feeling pretty good about that streak right now, since the new format was installed in 2014?
Yeah, they're I'm sure they can have their fingers crossed, hoping they can get one of those again. But it's been that way, and even the guys going into the race this weekend, they've talked about it and said, you're going to have to win the race. I don't think it's a situation where you can go down there and finish second and be the champion. Because typically those guys, I don't know what it is about that race, and you would think, well, eventually it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And maybe it won't. But with the teams, the caliber of teams that are in it, it's pretty evident that they should be running up front. And if that's the case, then you're going to have to win the race to win the title.
Do you put Martin Truex then as the favorite? Martin's been the best driver all season. I don't think there's any doubt about that. It's just amazing how much he's been at the top, all those stage points heading into the playoffs. If you take a look even at at his playoff races, just one race, which was Talladega, which is a luck race that he finishes outside the top 5, 3 wins. The thing I'm a little bit concerned with, though, is pressure. The pressure that you're supposed to win. You've dominated all year. You've never won the championship before. Can you guys handle the pressure? And not a particular racetrack that you guys have been all that great on. This hasn't been one of his best racetracks.
No, it hasn't. And that kind of, if there's a concern, with the 78 team, there's a couple of things that stand out to me. It's one, it's what you just mentioned. Homestead has not been one of their better tracks, and you only go there once a year, so it's not like, well, okay, we've got a couple of opportunities to figure it out. It's you've got the one opportunity. Now they did go there and test, and I know they felt good about their test there this year. So that's kind of I kind of want to say that's going to help them a little bit more than what they've done before. But the other concern is the fact that in the last mile and a half race they had at Texas, Kevin Harvick actually caught Truex at the end of the race, ran him down, caught him, passed him, and won the race. And I think everybody thought Truex was just, that team was so bulletproof on mile and a half tracks that, you wouldn't see that happen. And all of a sudden, here's a car that at the end of the race was every bit as good as the 78 was. So I think those are the two concerns that stand out to me. But on the positive side for those guys, he's won 7 times this year. He'd won 7 times his entire career before this year, so he's doubled his win total. 6 of the wins have come on mile and a half tracks, which Homestead's a mile and a half. It is their second trip to the championship before, I believe. So they've been there, but they didn't do that great when they were there in 15. They finished behind Kyle, Kevin Harvick, and Jeff Gordon. So they kind of know what that's like. But you're right, there is going to be some pressure on them. I like the fact that they won. He won in the first round to advance. He won in the second round to advance. And the stage points that they had accumulated, made him a no-brainer to make the championship 4, whether he won a race in the last stage or not. So those guys, I think they focused on Homestead once they knew they were going to be there. And I think that's been, I think there is some pressure on them, and it'll be interesting to see, how they handle that. But I really think, as well as they've run this year, they're not going to get too far off their game just because it's been so solid.
Okay. Are they your favorite?
Yes.
Okay. What about Kevin Harvick? Because Harvick, another former champ, seems to be peaking at the right time. This is only, I believe, the second time all year, or maybe actually the third time, but second time in probably months, where he's had 4 straight races of top 10s. And that includes 3 straight top 5s and that win at Texas. So he seems to be peaking at the right time, and he really does seem to like Homestead. So what do you think about Kevin Harvick winning a second championship?
Well, you're right. I think he really does like Homestead, and I think he likes, probably more than any of the other 3 guys that are in there, I think he likes being in a pressure situation. I think he kind of thrives in that.
Okay.
If it's a deal where it's not a lot on the line, I don't want to say they don't try as hard.
Bored?
But I just think he really thrives.
Okay.
Yeah. And the fact that I mentioned earlier about him winning at Texas and doing so by catching Truex and passing him, that was big. He's finished 3rd or better in 3 of the 4 playoff races at the mile and a half tracks. He's been there. He won the 14 championship, and that was the first time they had this format. So he knows what it's going to be like. There won't be any surprises for him. He's been kind of quiet, but that's just because they haven't had any big issues. They got the win, of course, but he's not had they've not had big problems, but on the other hand, they've not went out and run away with races.
No.
I think the fact that, he kind of, I don't know if he was trying to needle Truex and those guys or not when he said, I think, the pressure is going to be there for them. And now they know that we're as fast as they are at this time of the year. We're peaking. We're the team that's peaking. We're the team that people need to be watching. He's playing his cards just like he always does. And I think in my mind, honestly, if Truex and those guys don't win the championship, it's going to be because Kevin Harvick beats them.
All right. And then there's Brett Keselowski, who out of the 4 drivers would probably have to be considered the long shot. He did get the win at Talladega, but it's Talladega, so that's we know what kind of track what happens at those races, and you have to go all the way back to the first Martinsville race in April for his other win. Of course, he started off the season with the win in Atlanta, and then the problems for Logano and Penske in general for most of the rest of the season. They've been okay so far in the playoffs, but they've also caught maybe a couple of breaks over the last couple of races with some early race incidents, and they've been able to survive. So, what about Keselowski's chances? What do you think about what he's done previously at Homestead?
Well, I think he is. I mean, if you look at somebody and say, okay, who's the long shot out of these four? I think you definitely have to say it's those guys. And you're right. It's because they've had some breaks fall their way, but the teams have to take advantage of that when it happens. And I will say this for that number 2 team, they were able to do that. So you can't count them out. I mean, people have made that mistake, probably last week going to Phoenix, and then with everything that transpired there, Keselowski and his team make it to Homestead. I think, the thing that you look back on them this year and, ask what stands out about it, and I don't, in my mind, they've been a very average team for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. They won Atlanta early and they won Martinsville. So they had 2 wins in the first 6 races, but then they didn't win again until Talladega.
Yeah.
And once the playoffs started, and they do have the occasional bad day, but overall, I think their average finish is like 12th, and that's not really that bad. I just don't think a lot of people felt like they would be in the championship 4 round based on the way they had performed. They didn't. Atlanta's a 1.5-mile track, and it's a very fast track, and it's a lot more worn out, I think, than most of the other ones that they run on. So that one's a little bit different. But he had top 10s at a few of them, and then he struggled at some. Charlotte, he finished 39th, and Kentucky, he finished 39th.
Yep.
But then, in the Texas race, the last 1.5 miles, he was 5th. So, you're just really not real sure. I can't really pin those guys down. And he probably has, I want to say he has fewer starts at Homestead than anybody else. Maybe Truex. Truex, I think, has 12 starts, and I think Brad has like 9. So I think Brad has the fewest starts there. And he doesn't have a win there. He hasn't gone there and won to wrap up the title. When he won his title in 2012, it wasn't under this format.
Yep.
But he does have, he has a couple of top 5s and 2 or 3 top 10s. And now though, with this format and everything, that's the other thing that I don't know, that I think people are, it's going to be a surprise, as you've raced all year, especially somebody like Truex and that group. You've raced under a certain format where you have the stages and you're racing for stage points and you game plan around all of that.
Yeah.
And now you get into this race, and while you still have stages, you're not racing for stage points. It's basically you're racing to win that race from the drop of the green flag. You're not worried about any of that other stuff. And now you have to go back and say, okay, remember how we used to do this. That's what we're going to go back and do now. And I'm going to be interested in seeing how each of the teams approach that.
Now, what is the reason to have the stages in this race?
Well, for one thing, it'll still determine points positions for the guys not in the championship 4. I mean, they're still trying to finish 5th, 6th, 7th, and whatever. So that's basically what you want to do, and you don't want to just scrap the thing for everybody.
Okay. And that's it. That's the only reason.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, by the way, Keselowski too, just to show you where he's been compared to the other drivers, just 6 top 10s in his last 14 races. So that's not what we would expect at this point. But he got the win at Talladega that moved him through. A couple top 5s to start off, a couple top 5s after that, and that put him in this situation to win last week. And things looked a little bit hairy for him last week when Denny Hamlin was dominating the race. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Chase Elliott got on his tail. And it was almost surreal. You're like, really? This is going to happen? Chase Elliott is on is right behind Denny Hamlin. I mean, it was almost like, I can't believe this is happening. And then you just figured, okay, well, I know Denny knows Chase. He can't have Chase win the race, but there were enough laps in the race that I don't know if he was waiting for a caution to come out. He's just trying to hold him off as long as he could. But it just seemed that knowing that Chase was behind him under the scenario of what just took place a couple of weeks prior, were you surprised he just didn't get out of the way?
A little bit surprised at that. I mean, because honestly, obviously hindsight, you look back and you go, well, the smart thing for him to have done would have been that, and then hope that Chase doesn't win the race. But you can't take that chance, because if you go, okay, you know what, I'm not going to race this guy this hard. There's not a whole lot of laps left. I'm going to let him go by. He ends up winning the race, and you don't make the championship. How are you going to explain that to your team? How are you going to explain it to your sponsors? You pretty much have to fight for every opportunity you have out there. And there was, Denny wasn't. I'm sure he was thinking, I'm not completely out of this race right now. I mean, I have just as good a shot of winning as he does, whether he gets by me or not. And that's one more car I don't want to have to pass, so I'm going to race him hard.
Do you think that if they didn't have that altercation a couple of weeks prior, that Chase would have raced him that hard?
Oh, I definitely think that impacted it.
Okay.
I mean, I think Chase felt like, okay, you showed me at Martinsville how you're going to race me. Then this is how I'm going to race you when we're in the same situation, and that's what he did. And then people say, well, he wouldn't have done that had he been racing somebody else, that there wasn't an incident a week before or 2 weeks before. There wasn't a reason for it. But I mean, Chase is one of those guys that's always said, I'm not going out there looking to stir anything up, but I'm going to race you the way that you race me, and that's how Denny raced him. So, I don't think Denny has any room to complain about it.
Doesn't it already seem like, even just from what we've seen from Chase over the last couple of weeks, that he's grown up already, as far as not just with Denny, but it just seems that even with Martin Truex after that, it just seemed like he's realizing and growing up about, hey, this is for real. These big boys are going to race you hard, and the only way that you're going to grow up is you're going to have to race them hard too. And we saw it with Joey Logano.
Yeah, we did with him. You're right. It seemed like it played out with Joey maybe a little bit longer over a longer period of time, and it's come pretty quick for Chase. But you're right. I think initially some of those runner-up finishes and times when it looked like he could have won a race and something happened and he didn't, that he was okay, I'm gonna take the blame for that. It was probably something I did wrong. But I think he's gotten to the point now that you're exactly right. He realizes, look, these guys race at an entirely different level when you're running for the win up there. It's just, they're going to do things that you're not going to do in the early part of the race or the middle part of the race. They're going to move people. They're going to pressure you. And I've got to either do that or they're going to continue to beat me and I'm going to continue to finish second or on back. And I think he has grown up quite a bit. And I know I haven't talked to anybody that didn't like what they saw from him coming out of Phoenix.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So who's your pick? Who's going to win the race?
I think Truex is going to win it.
You're going to go with Truex. Okay. Wow. Yeah. All right. They're going to figure it out and they're going to get it done. So the best driver is going to win. So that usually doesn't work out that way, does it? Like last year.
I know. I was thinking, I picked Joey Logano at the beginning of the year, and he didn't even make the playoffs. And then I picked Kenseth to win it all once we got the playoff field set. I thought, I'm 0 for 2. What have I got to lose?
All right. Well, you might as well. I mean, and look, Truex has been the best driver all year, and he's the only one without the championship out of the three.
Right.
And it would be a nice story anyway. They've deserved it. Everybody would be very happy for him and the team. Who's got the best crew chief? Is it Paul Wolfe between Childress, Wolfe, Pern, and Stevens?
Man, that's a really good question. Paul Wolfe is so good, and I don't think, I don't think the reason that 2 team has not been as good this year, I don't think it's because of the guy behind the wheel, and I don't think it's because of the guy up on the pit box. I just think they haven't had the speed out of their cars.
Yep.
And some things they've got to work through. He's as good as the other ones. Childers is I mean, he's one of those guys. You look at him, and I swear I would say he's unflappable. Nothing gets this guy riled up. But then you talk to him afterwards, and he's like, he was eat up inside the whole time something was going on. He just doesn't show it. He's really good at hiding that, I think. Cole Pern has just been incredible this year with what they've been able to do. Those guys, he was one of the guys that figured out, you know what, we're going to pile up as many stage points as we can because they're going to be important. And they had such a lead with those before everybody else figured it out. And Adam Stevens with Kyle Busch is one of the best. So it'd be hard for me to say who's got the edge there.
All right, Kenny, what are you working on over at NASCAR.com?
Well, I've been working on a Dale Earnhardt Jr. piece. His last Cup start on Sunday. Working on a piece talking about how he got to Hendrick Motorsports, what put him there, why Rick Hendrick went after him, what they've accomplished. When you look back at it, what those guys did, do you consider that a success? His 10 years there or not. Been working on that and working on some other little pieces here and there on each of the championship teams going into it.
All right, Kenny, we'll check that out. And that'll be, when is that coming out?
It'll probably come out Friday. I'm thinking it'll either be Friday or Saturday.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll definitely look out for that at NASCAR.com. Kenny, enjoy the race on Sunday, and we definitely look forward to talking to you in between 2017 and 2018. I'm sure there'll be a ton of storylines to get us ready for the next season.
All right, Greg, I appreciate it, buddy.
Thanks.
Take care.
Yeah, thanks for doing this again this season, Kenny, by the way.
Sure, no problem.
Appreciate it. All right, thanks, Kenny. That's Kenny Bruce, NASCAR.com. And again, go check out his Dale Earnhardt Jr. article at NASCAR.com coming out in the next couple of days. So Kenny's been with us now for, time flies. So, I think he's been with us for about, it might be 8 years. It's been a long time. Kenny's been with us a long time. All right, so I want to thank Kenny Bruce once again for joining us. He goes with Martin Truex Jr., and I'm going with my preseason pick, Kyle Busch. We talked about that on Monday, and let's get a reaffirmation on who our next guest is going to pick for the race. By the way, CJ and I are going to do a final show on either Friday or race day. I'm going to try to push it to race day, but it could be Friday. And basically, we're going to take a look at our futures reports that we've done all season, or our picks report. We're going to go over all the handicapping that we put together this season, and let you know how that's worked out for us heading into the final race. Our futures are hopefully going to pay off. So all our investments each week long, all season long, we now get to find out if they pay off or not. So we'll go over all of that either Friday or Sunday before the race. But let's bring in Eric Smith from RaceReviewOnline.com. How's it going, Eric?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. So are you set with your pick, by the way? Do you need more information?
Well, I'm set, but I broke it down even further today and really looked at trends. Obviously, trends in some races you can buy a lot of, and sometimes you can sell a lot of. This one being Homestead, last race of the season, really looked at some trends, and a lot of eye-opening trends have happened soon. So it may might sway some people on who they think is going to win, depending on which trend you want to look into or not.
Well, which one is the one that, I mean, and are all these trends, are you capable, the ones, and again, this is available at Race Review Online, is this available before we get to qualifying and practice? This is just before any of that, not even necessary to find out where these guys start and what kind of speed they have?
Yeah, this is kind of stuff that it's more past history of this race. So a lot of the speed that you're going to maybe see in qualifying and stuff, it wouldn't be indicative on really the kind of trends that I've kind of looked into, because at this point, these guys, they are who they are. So these trends kind of look at, like, for example, since 2010, there has not been a repeat winner at Homestead. So that's pretty eye-opening with a lot of the playoff drivers of all those years for this would be the 7th year that have been eligible to win. And you look at in the span of 7 years, 6 races, it's the 7th year that you haven't had a repeat winner.
Okay.
So, and you look at the list of the drivers that are in the championship 4, 2 of the 4 have won there, and they've won there in the last 3 years. Granted, that could be an advantage. Most of the time, that would be an advantage that, hey, they're a past winner and it's been recent. But the trend is showing that it may be a first-time winner, which Martin Truex Jr. and Brad Keselowski have never won at Homestead before. So does that trend say those two are the popular trendy picks to win? That's one of the trends that I've looked into, that you can make a case if that trend holds true that maybe Martin Truex Jr. or Brad Keselowski. But you also got to look at, which pertaining, let's go to Martin Truex Jr., that in that same time frame, the driver that has led the most laps in that race has not even won the race, which is another eye-opening. So you got to look at the most dominant driver all day. It's a 267-lap race. So if you lead the most laps, you got to have a good enough car. They haven't won the race itself. So you look at a driver like, Martin Truex Jr., he's led over 2,000 laps this year, and 2,175 to be exact. 6 of his 7 wins this year have come on a mile-and-a-half circuit, which, granted, some of those tracks are different than Homestead, but it's still an intermediate track, and those are his strong points this year.
Sure.
So his trend says that he's probably going to be up front leading a lot of laps. The trend also says that you've had a different winner every year since 2011 or 2010. I'm sorry. So does that falls under his category? But also the driver that's led the most laps hasn't won, and Truex has led the most laps this season, and it's not really even close to anybody else. So does that take him out of the running? The other trend that shows
you're talking about leading the most laps on the season?
No, on at Homestead.
At Homestead, okay.
And I would just throw it out there that since Truex has led the most laps this season,
and we would expect that he would lead laps on Sunday, sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he would be one that you would look at, does that go against him? He's probably going to run up front and lead a lot of laps. So does he reverse that trend? A 7-year trend is a pretty strong statement to show that nobody's has led the most laps and won that race.
Don't you think it would be you'd be a little bit nervous if they didn't qualify in the top 10? If you were Martin Truex Jr.
I would be a little bit. Stats show that the most winners have come from the top 10, but Jimmy Johnson started 9th last year, and he only led 3 laps all day, and he won the championship. So it can be done. But I would definitely say I would be a little worried, but I wouldn't be too terribly worried because there's no stage points or anything, so you're not really worried about that. But you also, it is easier to start up front and stay up front. So I would be a little worried. It's the 36th race of the year, and especially these guys that are in it. Keselowski, I don't expect a lot of speed and qualify too far up front, while his teammate Joey Logano has had speed down there. I wouldn't expect a lot out of him. But like Martin Truex Jr., Kyle Busch, and Kevin Harvick, those guys are fast on intermediate tracks and at Homestead. I might be a little worried if all of a sudden they're not up front on Sunday, especially starting there.
Yeah, Johnson didn't Johnson start towards the rear last year? Didn't they have some sort of issue or something like that?
Oh, they did go to the back. His official qualifying spot was 9th, but that's right. His A post they manipulated, and thanks for reminding me that he did go to the back. So he was originally supposed to start 9th, and he started last, and he struggled to come through the field, and hence he only led 3 laps.
Yeah,
but
and then had that
that trend,
and had everything open up. The seas parted for him. which could, which is something we could see because basically what you're saying is if you see some drivers through the first half or maybe or even the first 3/4 of this race on Sunday, and you see a certain group of drivers that are dominating, don't think this race is over. If anything, once you start seeing maybe some late cautions, maybe with 40 to go or something, 30 to go, then get prepared because we could have another wild end of the race, especially on the restarts, which is what caused all the chaos last year.
Exactly. And there's another trend for that shows that, yes, expect that. Since 2003, so we're going back 14 years, and Homestead only holds one race a year, so 13 races, the last 13 races there, they've had at least 7 caution flags. So, and that's 13 straight years. So that tells you you're probably going to see at least 7 caution flags. We know 2 of them are for stages, which they didn't have before, so does that get pushed to 9?
Mm-hmm.
And then I dug even further, since this new format was in place in 2014, basically the win or go home or win in advance, the championship 4 format, that we have yet to see a final push to the end with more than 7 laps. So you've had a caution fly within the last 15 laps in all 3 years of this format, and the final restart has occurred in the last 7 laps.
Wow.
And this race actually has only gone into overtime just once in the last decade. So what it's basically showing is you're probably going to see quite a few cautions, and you're probably going to see one in the last 10, 15 laps, and you're going to have a late race restart within probably the last 5, 6, 7 laps. But here's the other thing. While we've seen that restart, there has been a pass for the lead in the last 7 laps to win this race in the last 3 years straight too. So if you're leading the race come that final caution with 10, 15 laps to go, stats show you're not going to win.
And that's been over the last 3 years with the winner.
In the same format.
Yeah, with this format. So each of the 3, whoever has that lead with like 10 laps to go hasn't won.
Yep, that's correct. Same with the lap. So you have that, and you have the guy that has led the most laps in every race there since 2010 has failed to win too.
Wow.
So that opens the door. Does that open the door for someone like Keselowski, who may not be running up front for most of the day? Would he have these stats? Does that open the door for someone to just kind of survive in advance, and all of a sudden, kind of what happened with Jimmy Johnson last year, let the chaos happen, and
yeah, that's true.
They fall, there you are.
Especially with Paul Wolf. He's a smart guy.
Exactly. Yep, you can't count that out. So, and there's also been at least 18 lead changes every year there since 2009.
Okay.
So, really
nice.
What these trends are showing me is expect a wild, chaotic, crazy race and something happen in the end that you can't even imagine. So, that's what they've shown really since 2010. Also, you got to look at over the last 6 years, that the only 3 teams to win there were Joe Gibbs Racing, Stewart-Haas Racing, and Hendrick Motorsports. That's it. So you've got JGR, Kyle Busch. You got Stewart-Haas, Kevin Harvick. Hendrick isn't in it. So does that trend kind of slide towards the Harvick-Kyle Busch range? You could make a case, but then again, Harvick has finished the top 10 and 14 of his 15 tries there, so he's going to be running up front and maybe leading some laps. So really, all these trends kind of come in a full circle that what I see is this race could be very chaotic.
Well, I certainly hope we all hope so. That's what we want. We want as much drama as possible, and I guess it's one of those things with all those different conflicting trends that we will pretty much only know which trend will work until the race is over, and then we'll be okay. Well, that's the one that worked. Is there one particular one that you trust the most, or you have the most confidence with?
I would say the one I have the most confidence with are the ones really about the cautions and the restarts and the lead changes. I expect, it's not to call NASCAR out, an old NASCAR yellows that you see at the end of the race, but something will probably happen within the last 15, 20 laps that'll probably bring out a caution. You also got to look at the drivers. We talked about this this week already with the aggression of a Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick. That say a restart, say they get off pit strategy, something happens in their mid pack and they got to push their way through. A caution's probably going to occur. I'm not saying they're going to be in it, but they might have a hand in it, spinning somebody getting in their way.
Oh, yeah.
They could be the one that passes for the lead in the end because they weren't leading, but they've got a good enough car to lead. So I can't see this race going the final 20 laps without a caution. So I would trust that, especially if we're going back since 2003. You've had 7 caution flags, at least 7 caution flags in a race. In 2014, you've seen a final push to the end that hasn't lasted longer than 7 laps. So I would say that that's the trend I trust the most. The laps lead, that's a crazy stat to think about, but how do we know if that's going to prove true in 2017? I can make a case for those drivers to dominate. I mean, then again, this is the final race. You're probably going to have a final pit stop at the end. Say somebody does dominate and they miss a lug nut, or the car drops off the jack and they take off too soon without getting a tire tightened, or a pit road could cause some kind of crazy chaotic ending. I could see that happening. Penske, here's the other one that they have yet to win a race at Homestead ever, and that's one of 2 tracks, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway of all places.
Wow.
You think of Penske, they've never won there either. So out of 2 tracks, out of the whole NASCAR circuit, Penske's never won at Homestead and Indy.
That's not good.
Do they reverse that? Do they win at Homestead this weekend, or does Keselowski? He's been worried about his mile-and-a-half program the whole time. Does he not have the speed? And that trend holds true. I can see that one holding true. I don't necessarily trust that they're magically going to find speed this weekend. But other than that, I still think your best bets are the big 3: Truex, Busch, and Harvick. Put a blanket over them, and you can make a case for either one.
Who is there? If there was some sort of allegiance between the 4, between 2 drivers out of the 4, whether it's friendship, sponsorship, teams, makes, that kind of thing. I mean, the only thing I'm seeing is, of course, since Truex and Kyle are both Toyota, but is if you had to pick one and say, you know what, I think if there's 2 guys, and of course we're not saying that they're going to be holding hands throughout the race and over the finish line. But if for whatever reason that they were all in some sort of a situation where somebody had to stick up for someone else for whatever reason between these 4 drivers, is there any of that going on between these 4 particular drivers?
I would say if there is, it would just be maybe the Truex Kyle Busch thing, just because they're teammates per se. There's that alliance there.
That's it.
Okay. Kyle's not going to work with Keselowski. Those 2 are not.
No.
They do not get along at all. So there's not going to be any help there. I think you'd see the Harvick and Keselowski kind of same situation. They're not teammates, but they're both under the Ford umbrella. You've got the Ford Championship weekend. They're sponsoring the weekend. And for the first time since 2004, they can get a championship.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I think you're going to see those 2 work together, give each other a little more room, but also don't rest on the fact that Harvick isn't necessarily a huge fan of Keselowski either. And if you remember the whole Keselowski-Jeff Gordon fight at Charlotte Texas a couple years ago, who was the one that pushed Keselowski into it? Was Kevin Harvick.
Uh-huh.
So he's basically he's not going to help anybody if he doesn't have to. So I think if your best option would be the Truex Kyle Busch thing, but I'll take it a spin a little bit further, is the Toyotas. It's a 1.5 mile track. They've had the most speed all year long. You pretty well know they're all going to be running up front. So I would say maybe Toyota as a whole. Martin Truex will be up front, Kyle Busch will be up front. But I think Eric Jones, he runs really well there. He likes running a high line too, kind of like Kyle Larson. So he may be pretty good there. Daniel Suarez should be pretty good there. So I think you might have them up front who are teammates to Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr. Matt Kenseth is definitely going to want to go out with another win now that he's tasted it. And he's good there already anyways. So expect him to be up front. And Denny Hamlin's really good there at Homestead. He's a multiple-time past winner there. He's led a lot of laps there. And he's got a sour taste in his mouth with how last weekend went. So he's going to be running up front. I could see those guys maybe pushing a buffer to maybe Harvick and Keselowski because they're going to be running up front, and being Toyota, they not going to have team orders per se, but you know they're going to be sit down in a meeting this week and saying, hey, if you guys are all running up front, please let Truex or Kyle Busch by, but also make it really hard for Keselowski and Harvick to get by. Play defense on those two.
Okay.
So they may have more of a buffer, because you look at Stewart-Haas Racing, nothing against Danica Patrick, but she's not going to be running in the top 10. Clint Boyer's kind of struggled a little bit towards the end of this year. I don't see him running in the top 10. Kurt Busch may, but how much has he packed it in just to get by the end of the year? I don't trust him to be running much in the top 10. You look at Brad Keselowski. Joey Logano has not run well in 1.5 mile tracks this year, and outside of short tracks, he just hasn't shown much. So do you really trust him to be running up front? So as far as their teammates helping, I don't see them having much team help, other than maybe they need to stick together as a kind of a Ford alliance, or the Toyotas. They're going to have a lot of cars running up front that can make it really miserable for Harvick and Keselowski to get through.
4 out of the last 8 winners have started both in the top 5 and outside the top 12. So that shows you that, the pole position may not mean a whole lot. What do you think would be a bigger story? The championship winner, or if either Dale Earnhardt Jr. or Danica Patrick won a race?
That's a good one. I would. It depends, I guess, on who the championship winner is. I think if Truex wins, it'll get a lot of traction because of the storyline. But Kyle Busch and Kevin Harvick and Brad Keselowski have all won a title before. I think Junior, obviously making his last, like, kind of a walk-off win in your retirement.
And by the way, I should probably ask you about the difference between the NASCAR media and the NASCAR family as opposed to the national media. Because the national media, it's not even a debate. If Dale Earnhardt Jr. or Danica Patrick won, they wouldn't care less who won the championship. They would just be talking about Danica Patrick and Dale Earnhardt Jr. all day long.
Exactly. National media, I think you're outside of Bob Hawkers with ESPN, who does a really good job. I think ESPN would even grab a hold of that. I think they would totally overshadow the race winner. NBC, I would say even like a network like NBC, if they didn't have the rights to the broadcast, I could see something like that. Hey, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Danica Patrick won the season finale at Homestead, where the champion won't get a lot of traction. I could see really outside of the NASCAR media that kind of travels the circus all year trying to give the pub to the champion, that really the Junior, Danica, if they would win, I would say that'd be more popular. For probably 90% of this world, you're going to know more about that than the actual.
And of course,
itself.
not that that's going to happen, especially with Danica Patrick, and not even the way Dale Earnhardt Jr. has been racing. So, is there anything at all that you've seen from Dale Earnhardt Jr. in his final races to lead you to believe that he's even going to have what it takes to finish in the top 10?
Honestly, I think he can get a top 10, and here's why. It's because out of his last 5 races, he's finished worse than 12th once.
Okay.
As weird as this sounds, it's his best stretch of the season.
Okay.
I don't know if maybe he's pushing a little more because he knows this time is this is it. He was very emotional at Phoenix. He was almost getting to tears, saying it's kind of finally hit him. So you might see a little extra gear out of Junior per se. And Hendrick, while their cars Chase Elliott's kind of might say, hey, what about me? Their cars have been a little bit down this year, and that's Chevrolet across the board. But then again, Chevy's kind of got to be a little irked that, look, we're not in the championship for the first time since 2003. We want to at least have a say in this, and maybe we give our best car to Dale Earnhardt Jr. Maybe we go all in with him because we want a storyline here.
Sure.
If we're not going to be talked about for the championship, let's go out let's hit a home run here. Maybe everybody unites around him, and people are going to tiptoe. They've already talked about this. They tiptoe around the championship four. If you're not part of that, don't make the news for taking out a championship four driver. Throw Junior in there. I don't think anybody's going to want to wreck Dale Earnhardt Jr. in his last race.
No,
who would
not
want
a
to
memory.
do that?
No, nobody. I think they'd rather wreck a champion or one of those 4 drivers.
I fully agree. So you can make a case. Jimmy Johnson won there last year and he only led 3 laps. Homestead's never been his best track. And I've talked about the cautions at the end.
Sure.
If you're Dale Jr. and you're Greg Ives and that caution, say it comes out with 10 to go, why would you pit? If you're good to go on gas,
you're right. Yeah.
And
Let
you're
somebody
running
let them force their way by him.
exactly. And then we've seen the chaos at NASCAR races. Cautions breed cautions. Who's to say they're going to get enough laps to where these guys aren't going to wreck themselves out like a restrictor plate race?
Yeah.
So
We had it at Indy.
I can make a case where Junior could get a top 10, but then again, he can't get caught up in somebody else's mistake. I think he's going to have a good enough car, but you also have to look at the flip side. Junior's been real worried, obviously, the last year and a half about his health. And his whole thing with the restrictor plate races, he loves them, but he made that point after Talladega. I'm happy I escaped with my health this year. I've got through all 4 of them, and I'm healthy, and I can ride off. If he's battling for the win and things get hairy, and he knows maybe I don't have the car to win, does he lift a little bit? Does he get out of it and say, look, I don't want to wreck in my last race and ruin potentially having to rehab for an injury or get another concussion when I'm 5 laps away from walking off? Does that come into his mind? And if that crosses your mind, then you're already lifting.
Yeah,
It's
I don't know.
already in
I
your
don't know.
head,
For
you're
a
already
win,
slow.
I wouldn't. If he was anywhere near winning that race, to tell you
I
the
think he
truth,
goes for it.
yeah, I don't think he
Yeah.
would even think twice about his health. I think that would
No.
be like, what health? What? You
Yeah,
wouldn't even be
I'm
thinking.
going for it.
Yeah. So, and look, it would be, look, it would just be incredible if he even led like 10 laps in the race. If Dale Earnhardt Jr. actually were to somehow find a way to lead this race, even if it was with 100 or 150 laps to go for like 10 or 15 laps, it would probably, you'd have Twitter going nuts.
Yeah.
So that's all it would take. Let's hope we even have something like that. It would be nice to have just something.
That would be NASCAR's dream. Would be they don't want to overshadow the champion, but wouldn't you rather have Dale Earnhardt Jr. win his last race? And
sure.
Then all of a sudden because you could co-promote it. They could, and really, here's the other thing to look out for. Say out of these 4 drivers, say like Kyle Busch or Martin Truex Jr. has a problem, and they're not up front in the end, they're not in contention. And say Keselowski kind of lucks into like like Jimmy Johnson did last year, and say he's second and Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s first, and Keselowski doesn't have a lot of pressure for the championship. Does he kind of ride behind Jr. those last few laps, being that's like one of his best friends? Does he let his best friend go out knowing, look, I got this title if I just ride here?
Yes.
Do I really want to push it?
No.
Do you want to be the guy that passes Dale Earnhardt Jr. for the
No, you don't. No, you don't. No, I got the championship. That's good enough for me. I don't have to win this race. You don't have to win. So yeah, no way. You definitely.
So that's why I said I could make a case where if he can find his way to the front, that he might be able to win this thing because he's going to have a really good hot rod under him with Chevy Power. They're going after that because they're not happy not being in this final championship 4.
Okay.
Then you've got guys that they're not, and he's running well lately. He finished top 10 again at Phoenix, and he didn't have a great best of his day, and he still finished in the top 10. So he could make it up there. And you are going to have guys that will race him differently just for the fact that, you don't want to wreck Dale Earnhardt Jr. in his last race. So is he going to go out and win? Probably not. But he does have a case where I'd give him a percentage chance, yeah.
All right. Sounds good. Well, we will definitely look forward to wrapping this up at some point next week. Hopefully we'll get a chance to do it on Monday. And it's been good to have you here during the season. So we've got another one to go to wrap things up, though. And then we look forward to talking to you all throughout next season. And definitely a few times during the off season, because we really haven't had time from week to week to really get into the whole new teams, new affiliations, and all that. And so there's all that stuff to kind of catch up with you once the race is over and the season's over. So I'm looking forward to doing that with you, Eric, and I appreciate your time as always.
Absolutely, looking forward to it.
All right, thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
All right, that's Eric Smith, and again, he runs Race Review Online, so he's the man, he's the editor, and we are not going to talk. We're not talking to him again until the race is over. But if you want more analysis regarding the race from Eric, don't forget the On Demand show from Monday. CJ, Eric, and I did that show. That's available right now. I'll talk with CJ again either Friday or race day. That'll give us an opportunity to make our final picks for the race and also our future plays. We'll go over all the futures from this year, let you know what we need out of the drivers to win the championship and the race in order to see if CJ wins or I win. We've been competing against each other all season, and of course, the hope is that in 2018 we'll be able to compete against you guys, the listeners. So thanks for tuning in again. I want to thank Kenny Bruce from NASCAR.com for joining us, of course. It's again, we're going to do this one more time, so I don't want to make it sound like this is it. But we'll see you again as far as overall detailed race analysis. That's pretty much it. For anybody that has been following our handicapping and our fantasy reports, that includes the futures and the picks. We'll join you again at some point with CJ in a few days. So we'll see you again sometime soon on Prime Sports NASCAR before Homestead. And then once again next week, probably Monday, to wrap it up for the season. And then we will definitely be back in the off season to keep you updated on what's going on before 2018 begins. So for Kenny Bruce, for Eric Smith, I'm Greg DePalma. We'll see you next time. Is transmissions, where was you? Now try to push, try to keep us all down.